Millionaire rejected every woman, but he never thought he'd fall in love with a single mother sleeping at a bus stop with her son. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The traffic light burned red against the January night, and Julian Thorne's hands tightened on the steering wheel of his Mercedes, as if the leather might anchor him to something real. 7 years. 7 years since he had seen anything beyond the windshield of his own grief. The city streets passed like frames of a film he was no longer watching, each corner as meaningless as the last, each night a replica of the one before. But tonight, something made him look. Perhaps it was the way the streetlight caught the frost on the bus stop's plastic shelter. Perhaps it was the angle of his headlights as they swept across the empty sidewalk. Or perhaps, as he would think later when sleep refused to come, it was simply fate tapping on his shoulder and whispering, "Look up! Look now!" A woman sat on the bench, her head tilted at an angle that spoke of exhaustion deeper than sleep. In her arms, wrapped in a coat that had seen too many winters, a small boy rested against her chest. Even from his car, Julian could see the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her hand curved protectively around the child's back, even in unconsciousness. The boy's face, peaceful in sleep, was pressed against her shoulder. On the bench beside them sat a single bag, worn at the corners, everything they owned compressed into faded canvas. Julian's heart, which had beaten in mechanical rhythm for so long, suddenly remembered what it felt like to skip. He did not think. Thinking would have meant driving forward when the light changed. Thinking would have meant the logical voice in his head reminding him that he had a meeting in the morning, that this was not his concern, that the world was full of people in need and he could not save them all. But Julian Thorne had stopped listening to logic the day his wife died in childbirth, taking their son with her. He had stopped listening to anything except the hollow echo of his own footsteps in a house too large for one man's grief. The Mercedes pulled to the curb. The engine died. The night air, sharp with winter's teeth, bit at his face as he stepped out. His breath formed clouds that dissipated into darkness. His shoes, Italian leather worth more than some people's monthly rent, clicked against concrete that had never known his kind of polish. He approached with care, avoiding any movement that might startle. This close, he could see the details that distance had softened. The woman's coat was clean but threadbare. Her hair, dark and pulled back, showed streaks of premature grey at the temples. Her hands, wrapped around her son, were workers' hands, scarred and rough. But her face, even slack with exhaustion, held a beauty that had nothing to do with symmetry and everything to do with strength. The boy shifted in his sleep, and a small plastic inhaler fell from his coat pocket, clattering against the bench. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet street. The woman's eyes opened. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her gaze went from confusion to assessment to fear in the space of a heartbeat. Her arms tightened around her son. Her body angled itself between the child and Julian, instinct overriding exhaustion. "Please," she said, and her voice was steady despite the fear. "We are not hurting anyone. We will move if we are bothering you. Just give me a moment to wake him gently. He has asthma. If he wakes up scared, he cannot breathe right." Julian felt something crack inside his chest. Not his heart breaking, he realized. His heart remembering how to feel. "I am not here to hurt you," he said, and the words came out rougher than he intended. "I am not here to make you move. I am here because I saw you and I could not keep driving." Her eyes narrowed, reading him the way a person learns to read danger when survival depends on it. "What do you want?" What did he want from her? Julian looked at her, at the boy sleeping in her arms, at the bag that held their world, and he felt something he had not felt since Sarah's funeral. He felt purpose knocking at the door of his constructed numbness. "My name is Julian Thorne," he said. I own an estate in Connecticut. The gardens there have been neglected for years. They need someone who understands growing things, someone who can bring them back to life. I am offering you a job, a real job, with a cottage on the property, health insurance, a salary, a place for your son to be safe." She stared at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. "You do not know me," she said, each word measured. "You do not know anything about me, and you want to offer me a job in the middle of the night at a bus stop." Her laugh was short and sharp. "I have heard this story before, mister. It usually ends with a woman realizing that there is no such thing as a free lunch." "It is not free," Julian said. "You would be working. The gardens are extensive. They have not been properly tended in 7 years. You would earn every dollar I pay you." "Why?" The single word cut through the cold air. "Why me? Why now?" Julian looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 7 years, he told someone the complete truth. "Because I have been dead for a very long time. Tonight, I saw you protecting your son even in your sleep, and something in me remembered what it felt like to be alive. I do not know if you need rescuing, but I know that I do, and maybe we can help each other." The silence stretched between them. The boy stirred, coughed, and she reached for his inhaler without thinking, her movements practiced and sure. She put it back in his pocket with the gentleness of a mother who had done this 1,000 times. "What is your name?" Julian asked. "Amelia," she said after a long pause. "Amelia Hayes. This is my son, Leo. He is 6 years old. He has asthma. We have been moving around for a long time. I do not trust easily, Mr. Thorne, and I do not understand why a man in a car that costs more than most houses would stop at a bus stop at 11 o'clock at night to offer a job to a woman he has never met. Because 7 years ago, my wife died giving birth to our son. The baby did not survive. I have spent every day since then trying to forget what it felt like to care about anything. Tonight, I saw you, and I could not forget. I could not drive past. I could not pretend I had not seen something that mattered." Amelia's eyes, sharp with suspicion, softened just slightly. "You are a widower. I am a ghost living in a house that used to be a home. You would not be doing me a favor by accepting. I would be doing myself one." Leo coughed in his sleep, a rattling sound that made Amelia's entire body tense. She rubbed his back, whispering something too soft for Julian to hear. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Health insurance?" she asked. "Comprehensive. Through my company. It covers pre-existing conditions. A cottage, not a room in a house where you would have access. A separate building, 2 bedrooms, fully furnished. You would have privacy. I would have boundaries. And if I say yes, and this turns out to be something other than what you are describing, if you turn out to be one of those men who think kindness buys something it should not." Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted a business card and handed it to her. "That is my lawyer's number. Call him tomorrow. He will verify everything I have told you. He will draw up a contract that protects you. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, Miss Hayes. I'm asking you to give us both a chance to remember what it feels like to be more than our worst moments." She looked at the card, at him, at her sleeping son. The wind picked up, carrying the promise of snow. Leo shivered, and Amelia pulled her coat tighter around him. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, but we do this right. Contract, lawyer, everything legal and clear. And the first time I feel unsafe, the first time you make me regret this, we leave, no questions, no arguments. Agreed." Julian felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been knotted tight for so long he had forgotten it was there. "My car is warm. Let me take you there tonight. You can see the cottage, see the estate. If you do not like it, I will drive you anywhere you want to go in the morning. No strings." Amelia stood, moving with care, cradling Leo against her chest. She picked up their bag with her free hand, and Julian took it from her without asking, surprised by its weight. Everything they owned, everything that mattered, all fitting into one worn canvas bag. They walked to his car in silence. Julian opened the back door, and Amelia settled Leo onto the leather seat, buckling him in with practiced efficiency. She slid into the front passenger seat, and as Julian started the engine, the heat rushing through the vents, she closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said, the words almost lost in the quiet. "No," Julian replied, pulling away from the curb, the bus stop receding in his rearview mirror. "Thank you. You have no idea what you just gave me." As they drove through the sleeping city toward Connecticut, toward his estate that had been a mausoleum for 7 years, Julian glanced in the mirror at the boy sleeping in his back seat. Leo's face was peaceful, trusting, innocent, and Julian made a promise to himself, to the ghost of his wife, to whatever force had made him look up at that exact moment. He would not fail this family. He would not let them disappear back into the night. Whatever it took, whatever it cost, he would make sure that when Amelia Hayes looked back on this night, she would see it as the moment when everything changed, for both of them. The road stretched ahead, dark and full of possibility, and for the first time in 7 years, Julian Thorne was not afraid of what morning might bring. The cottage windows glowed golden in the pre-dawn darkness, and Amelia stood in the doorway, unable to make herself step inside. Behind her, Julian waited with Leo sleeping in his arms, patient in a way that suggested he understood the weight of thresholds. This was not just a house. This was the moment when she stopped running. "2 bedrooms," Julian said, his voice soft to avoid waking the boy. "Bathroom with a tub, kitchen is small but functional. Heat works. I checked everything this afternoon after I hired the position. I had it cleaned and stocked with basics. Milk in the refrigerator for Leo, bread, eggs, coffee for you." "You did all that today?" Amelia turned to look at him. This stranger who had upended her life in the space of one conversation at a bus stop. "I did not sleep much. It seemed more useful than staring at the ceiling." She studied him in the dim light spilling from inside. Tall, maybe 6 feet, 2 inches. Dark hair that was graying at the temples, probably mid-40s, though grief had etched lines that made him seem both older and somehow ageless. Expensive coat over clothes that fit the way only custom tailoring could achieve. But it was his eyes that caught her. Haunted eyes, eyes that had seen something beautiful die and had never quite recovered. "Why do you really want us here?" she asked. Julian looked down at Leo in his arms, and something in his expression made Amelia's breath catch. "Because this house has been silent for 7 years. Because I had forgotten what it sounded like to hear a child breathe. Because maybe, if I help you build a life, I will remember how to live one myself." The honesty of it disarmed her. Amelia nodded once and stepped inside. The cottage was perfect. Not perfect in the sense of luxury, though it was nicer than anywhere she had lived in 6 years. Perfect in the sense that someone had thought about what a mother and child might need. The bedrooms were small but warm. The kitchen had a table big enough for 2. The bathroom had a lock on the inside. The living room had a couch that looked comfortable and a lamp that cast soft light. "The second bedroom," Julian said, carrying Leo toward it. "I thought for him." Amelia followed, and when she saw the room, her throat tightened. A twin bed with a blue quilt, a small dresser, a window that looked out over what must be, in daylight, a garden. On the nightstand, a glass of water and a note in careful handwriting. "For emergencies, my number. For anything else, your choice." Julian laid Leo on the bed with surprising gentleness, and Amelia moved to take off her son's shoes. Together, in silence, they settled the boy under the covers. Leo did not wake, so deep in exhaustion that only the easing of tension showed he felt the difference between a bus stop bench and a real bed. In the living room, Amelia allowed herself to feel the weight of the last 8 hours. "I need you to understand something, Mr. Thorne." "Julian. I need you to understand something, Julian." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I do not trust easily. The last man I trusted, Leo's father, put me in the hospital twice. I escaped when Leo was 6 months old. We have been moving ever since. Shelters, friends' couches, bus stops when everything else failed. So when you look at me and see someone who needs rescuing, you need to know that I have been rescuing myself and my son for 6 years. I am good at surviving. What I'm not good at is letting someone help." "I'm not trying to rescue you," Julian said. "I am trying to hire you for a job that did not exist until you saw me on that bench, for a job that has existed since my wife died and I locked the greenhouse and let everything she loved wither, for a job I have needed to fill for 7 years but did not have the courage to face. You did not create this need, Amelia. You just made me finally see it." She wanted to believe him. That was the dangerous part. She wanted to believe that this beautiful man in his beautiful clothes, with his beautiful house, actually needed her for something other than the obvious. She wanted to believe that fate could be kind, that the universe might look at a woman sleeping at a bus stop and think, "Not this time we send help." "Show me the gardens in the morning," she said finally. "Show me what needs to be done. Let me prove I can do this job before I accept it." "Fair enough." Julian moved toward the door, then paused. "Amelia, I want to be clear about something. You will have your own life here, your privacy, your choices. I am not your savior. I am your employer. If that changes, if anything changes, it will be because we both choose it, not because you owe me anything. Never because of debt or gratitude or fear. Do you understand?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. After he left, Amelia locked the door, checked on Leo 3 times, and then allowed herself to shower in a bathroom that was hers, with hot water that did not run out, with a lock that worked. She stood under the spray and cried, silent tears washing away 6 years of vigilance, 6 years of sleeping with one eye open, 6 years of wondering when the bottom would fall out again. When she crawled into her bed with clean sheets and a pillow that smelled like lavender, she thought about the man in the big house, the widower who had stopped at a traffic light and chosen, in that moment, to see her as something other than invisible. She thought about his hands, gentle with Leo, his voice, careful with her, his eyes, haunted by ghosts she understood too well. Sleep came easier than it had in years. Morning arrived with light so bright that Amelia woke disoriented, her heart racing before she remembered where she was. Not a shelter, not a bus stop. Connecticut, the Thorne estate, a cottage that was, at least for now, home. Leo was already awake, standing at the window with his face pressed against the glass. "Mom," he whispered, awestruck. "Mom, look." Amelia joined him, and her breath caught. The estate spread out before them, a landscape of winter beauty. The main house, 3 stories of stone and glass, sat at the center like a dowager queen. Around it, gardens stretched in geometric patterns, though even from here she could see the neglect. Overgrown beds, unpruned shrubs, pathways choked with weeds, and beyond it all, a greenhouse that caught the morning sun and threw it back in fractured light, its glass walls clouded with dust and time. "Is this real?" Leo asked. "I think so, baby. I think maybe it is." A knock at the door made them both jump. Amelia found Julian on the step, looking more rested than he had the night before, but still carrying that weight in his eyes. He wore jeans and a sweater instead of the expensive coat, but somehow he still looked like money. "Good morning," he said. "I thought maybe breakfast. The main house has a kitchen that actually gets used, and I make decent pancakes, if you are comfortable with that." Leo's face lit up. "Pancakes?" Amelia's instinct was to say no, to maintain boundaries, to keep this professional. But she looked at her son's hopeful face and thought about the empty refrigerator in their tiny kitchen, and she nodded. Pancakes would be good. The walk to the main house took them through gardens that told a story of abandonment. Sarah loved these, Julian said, his voice careful. My wife. She spent hours here, planning, planting. She had this whole vision for how it would all connect. The roses over there were supposed to bloom in June. The herb garden was meant to supply the kitchen. The greenhouse was her sanctuary. What happened after she died? Amelia asked. I locked the greenhouse door and never opened it again. I fired the gardening staff. I let everything die because I could not bear to see life continue when hers had stopped. He paused at a particularly overgrown bed. I am not proud of that, but I am being honest. Honesty is good, Amelia said. Inside the main house, Amelia tried not to stare. Vaulted ceilings, windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, furniture that was beautiful in an understated way, but also dust on surfaces, curtains drawn in most rooms. The feeling of a museum, not a home, the kitchen at least, showed signs of life. Julian moved around it with competence, and soon the smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air. Leo sat at the counter, swinging his legs and asking 100 questions. Julian answered each one patiently, and Amelia watched the two of them, this man and her son, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. After breakfast, Julian led them to the greenhouse. He held the key like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I have not been inside since the funeral. You do not have to go in now, Amelia said. Yes, he said quietly. I do. The door opened with a creak. Inside, the air was thick and dusty. Dried plants stood in pots like monuments to neglect. Garden tools hung on walls. A workbench held half-finished projects, and on that bench, carefully preserved under glass, a journal with Sarah's name embossed on the cover. Julian picked it up with shaking hands. She wrote in this every day, plans for the gardens, notes on what worked and what did not, thoughts about the baby coming, dreams for the future. He opened it to a random page and read aloud, his voice breaking. Gardens are proof that beautiful things can grow from dirt and darkness. I cannot wait to teach our son that when he is old enough to hold a spade. Amelia moved to his side without thinking. She was wise. She was. And she would have liked you, I think. She always believed in second chances. They stood there in the dusty greenhouse, 3 people marked by loss, and something shifted, something began. Not romance, not yet, but recognition, the understanding that they were all survivors of different wars, and perhaps together they could remember what peace felt like. Leo found a packet of seeds on the workbench. Can we plant these? Julian looked at Amelia. She looked at the greenhouse, at the potential beneath the neglect. Yes, she said, yes, we can plant them. And so they began. 3 weeks passed like a dream that Amelia kept expecting to end. She woke each morning in the cottage that was becoming home, made breakfast for Leo, and walked to the gardens with a sense of purpose she had forgotten existed. The work was hard, but satisfying. Her hands, already rough from years of survival, grew stronger. Her back ached in that good way that came from honest labor, and slowly, row by row, bed by bed, the gardens began to wake. Julian was there more often than an employer needed to be. He would appear mid-morning with coffee, or mid-afternoon with questions about plant placement, or evening with observations about progress. They talked while they worked, about gardens, about weather, about Leo, who thrived in ways that made Amelia's heart hurt with relief. But beneath the professional conversations, something else grew. Glances that lasted a moment too long, hands that brushed during tool exchanges, silences that felt comfortable instead of awkward. Amelia caught herself watching Julian when he did not know she was looking. The way he laughed at Leo's jokes, the way his face lost some of its haunted quality when he was digging in the dirt, the way he sometimes stood very still, as if listening to something only he could hear. One afternoon in early February, while Leo was at a makeshift outdoor classroom Amelia had set up, Julian asked about her past. They were pruning dead branches from a rosebush, and the question came carefully, as if he knew he was stepping on tender ground. "You do not have to tell me," he added quickly, "but I would like to understand if you want to share." Amelia considered the shears in her hand, the thorns that had taught her to be careful. His name was Marcus. Leo's father. We met when I was working 3 jobs, trying to survive after my parents died. He seemed kind, stable, successful, everything I needed. By the time I realized what he really was, I was pregnant. "He hurt you?" It was not a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, the first time I believed his apology. The second time I believed his promise to change. The third time I was 8 months pregnant, and I realized that if I stayed, my son would grow up watching his mother get destroyed. So I left, in the middle of the night, with nothing but the clothes I was wearing and the determination to give Leo something better. That took courage. It took terror. Courage is when you have a choice. I did not have one." Julian set down his pruning shears. "Where is he now, Marcus?" "I do not know, and I do not want to know. We disappeared, changed names unofficially, moved constantly, made ourselves invisible. For 6 years we have been running. And now—" Amelia looked around the garden, at the cottage beyond, at Leo bent over his books in the winter sunlight. "Now I am tired of running. Now I want to believe that maybe we have run far enough." That night, Julian made a decision he should not have made. He hired a private investigator to locate Marcus Bennett, to make sure the man was not looking for Amelia and Leo. He told himself it was prudent, protective. But really, it was the beginning of a pattern that would later nearly cost him everything he was building: the need to solve, to fix, to use his money and power to eliminate threats, to control outcomes because he could not control the ache in his chest every time he watched Amelia smile at her son. He was falling in love, though he would not admit it to himself for weeks yet. He was falling in love with a woman who had every reason not to trust men like him, and in his desire to keep her safe, he was already starting to make the mistakes that would almost destroy them. But that was still to come, for now there were only the gardens and the work, and the slow thaw of 2 hearts that had been frozen too long. Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper who had stayed through everything, watched Julian watching Amelia, and she smiled. She had served the Thorne family for 30 years. She had seen Julian and Sarah fall in love. She had held Julian when Sarah died. She had watched him turn to stone. Now she saw him turn back into a man. "Miss Hayes is good for you," she told Julian one evening. "She is my employee, Mrs. Chen. She is the woman who made you remember how to smile. Do not insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise." Julian wanted to argue. Instead, he went to his room and looked at Sarah's photograph. He had moved it from his bedside table to a shelf the week before, a small shift that felt monumental. "I do not know if I am betraying you or honoring you," he said to the picture. "I do not know if loving someone else means I loved you less. But I am so tired of being dead, Sarah. I am so tired of this house being a tomb. If you can hear me, if you are somewhere watching, please understand. Please forgive me. Please want me to live." The photograph did not answer, but something in Julian's chest loosened anyway. Permission granted, even if only by himself. Downstairs, Amelia tucked Leo into bed and thought about Julian's hands in the garden dirt, gentle with the roses. She thought about his laugh, which had become more frequent. She thought about the way he looked at Leo with a hunger that had nothing to do with appetite, and everything to do with a father's heart that had never gotten its chance. She thought about trust and risk, and whether a woman who had spent 6 years running could let herself stand still long enough to build something real. Sleep came, as it had every night since they arrived, easier than it should have. As if some part of her recognized this place, this man, this possibility, and whispered, "You are safe now. You can rest." In his bedroom, Julian lay awake and thought the same thing. Safe. For the first time since Sarah died, he felt safe enough to want something, safe enough to hope. Neither of them knew that safety was an illusion. That Victoria Sterling, 30 miles away in Manhattan, had just received a phone call from a friend who had seen Julian at a business dinner looking happier than he had in years, that she had made it her business to find out why, that she had discovered Amelia and Leo, and that she had decided this could not be allowed to continue. The storm was gathering. But for one more week, the gardens would grow, and Julian and Amelia would work side by side, and Leo would play in the grass, and they would all believe that the worst was behind them. They were wrong, but they were also, for this moment, happy, and sometimes that is enough. The asthma attack came without warning on a Tuesday afternoon in late February. One moment, Leo was helping Julian measure soil pH in the garden beds, carefully recording numbers in a notebook like a tiny scientist. The next, he was coughing, that wet, rattling sound that made Amelia's blood turn cold no matter how many times she heard it. She was there in seconds, inhaler in hand, her voice calm in the way she had trained it to be. "Okay, baby, okay. You know what to do. Breathe with me. In, out, in, out." But this time was different. This time, the inhaler was not enough. Leo's lips were turning blue, his chest was heaving, his eyes were wide with the fear that made everything worse. "Julian," Amelia's voice cracked. "Call 911. He was already moving, phone to his ear, voice sharp and clear giving the address. 6-year-old male, severe asthma attack, respiratory distress. "Yes, we have his inhaler. It is not working." "How long?" Okay, I understand." He crouched next to Amelia. "They are 7 minutes out. What can I do?" "Keep him calm, talk to him, let him hear a voice that is not scared." So Julian did. He knelt in the dirt, and he took Leo's small hand, and he talked about gardens, about seeds, about how sometimes things need to struggle to grow strong, but they always come through it. He talked about his wife, how she would have loved meeting Leo. He talked about courage and breathing, and how the ambulance was coming and everything would be okay. And Leo, eyes locked on Julian's face, fought to breathe. The ambulance seemed to take hours, though it arrived in 6 minutes. Paramedics moved with efficient calm, oxygen mask, assessment, loading Leo onto a stretcher. Amelia climbed in beside him, and Julian said, "I am following. I will be right behind you." At the hospital, the emergency room became a blur of doctors and nurses, and questions Amelia had answered 100 times before. Allergies, medications, previous episodes, insurance information. Through it all, Julian stood beside her, a steady presence that asked nothing and offered everything. They put Leo on oxygen and steroids. They monitored his breathing. They spoke in the calm tones of professionals who had seen this before and knew it would be okay. But Amelia could not make herself believe it. Not until Leo's color returned, not until his breathing steadied, not until he reached for her hand and whispered, "Mom, I'm okay now." Then she broke. 7 years of holding it together, 7 years of being strong, 7 years of never letting Leo see her fear. It all came crashing down in that sterile hospital room. She sobbed into her hands, great wrenching cries that she could not control, while her son slept peacefully under oxygen and monitors. Julian did not try to fix it. He did not offer meaningless platitudes. He simply pulled a chair close and put a hand on her shoulder, and when she turned and collapsed against him, he held her while she fell apart. "I cannot lose him," she gasped between sobs. I cannot. He is everything. If something happens to him, I will not survive it. Nothing is going to happen to him. Julian's voice was rough. I promise you, Amelia, we will not let anything happen to him. You cannot promise that. Nobody can promise that. Then I am lying, because I need you to hear it, because I need you to believe it, because I cannot watch you break like this, and not promise you anything you need. She pulled back, looking at him through tears. You do not even know us. We are strangers who showed up in your life 3 weeks ago. Why do you care this much? Julian reached up and wiped tears from her face with his thumb, the gesture so tender that it made her breath catch. Because 3 weeks ago, I was a ghost. Because you and Leo made me remember what it feels like to be human. Because when I watch him sleep, I feel like maybe I get a second chance at the family I lost. Because you are not strangers. You are the people who saved my life, and I will spend the rest of mine making sure you never regret stopping at my traffic light. It was a bus stop. It was fate. They sat in silence then, in the harsh fluorescent light of the hospital room, while Leo slept, and monitors beeped, and somewhere down the hall a baby cried, and Amelia let herself lean into Julian, let herself borrow his strength, let herself believe for just a moment that she was not alone anymore. At 4 in the morning, the doctor cleared Leo to go home. Julian drove them back to the estate as the sun began to color the horizon. Leo slept in the back seat. Amelia sat in front, exhausted and wrung out, and Julian's hand found hers on the console between them. Tell me about Sarah, Amelia said suddenly. Tell me what happened. Julian was quiet for so long that she thought he would not answer. Then he said, we tried for years to have a baby. Fertility treatments. Hope. Disappointment. Hope again. When she finally got pregnant, it felt like a miracle. But there were complications from the beginning. High blood pressure, pre-eclampsia. The doctors monitored her closely, but something went wrong during delivery. Placental abruption, emergency surgery. She was bleeding, and they could not stop it. She died holding my hand and asking me to save the baby. But the baby had been without oxygen too long. He lived for 20 minutes. Just long enough for me to hold him, to tell him I loved him, to beg him to stay. Then he was gone, and Sarah was gone, and I was alone. Amelia squeezed his hand, unable to speak. I had all the money in the world, Julian continued, his voice raw. All the resources, the best doctors, the best hospital, and I could not save them. I could not save either of them. So I decided that if I could not save the people I loved, I would not love anyone. I would not risk that kind of pain again. I would just exist, just breathe, just take up space until it was my turn to stop. But you stopped. At the bus stop. You looked up. I looked up and saw you protecting Leo even in your sleep, and I thought maybe loving people is not about saving them. Maybe it is just about showing up, being there, doing what you can. And I wanted to show up for you, for him. For myself. They pulled into the estate as the sun broke fully over the horizon, painting everything gold. Julian parked in front of the cottage, and they sat for a moment, neither wanting to break the spell. I am scared, Amelia whispered. I am scared of what I am feeling. I am scared of trusting this. I am scared that I am going to wake up and this will all be gone. I am terrified, Julian admitted, because for the first time in 7 years I want something. I want this. I want to come home and find you in the gardens. I want to teach Leo about roses. I want to sit at dinner and hear about his day. I want to fall asleep knowing you are safe in the cottage and wake up knowing you will be there in the morning. And that terrifies me, because wanting things means I can lose them. So, what do we do? Julian turned to look at her, and in the dawn light, his eyes were clear. We be brave. We take the risk. We build something knowing it might fall apart, because the alternative is going back to being ghosts, and I cannot do that anymore. Can you? Amelia thought about the bus stop, about the shelters, about 7 years of running, about Leo sleeping peacefully in the back seat instead of coughing himself awake in fear, about Julian's hand in hers, warm and solid and real. "No," she said. "I cannot do that anymore either." They carried Leo inside together, put him in his bed, and stood for a moment watching him breathe. Easy breaths, safe breaths, the breaths of a child who knew he was protected. At the cottage door, Julian hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Will you let me be part of this? Part of Leo's life? Not as your employer, not as a friend who helps out, but as someone who cares about him, who wants to be here for his asthma attacks and his school projects and his bad days and his good days, who wants to be a father," Amelia finished. "I know I have no right to ask that. I know it is too soon. I know—" She kissed him, just a touch of lips, there and gone, but enough to stop his words. "It is too soon to know what this is, but it is not too soon to know that Leo loves you, and that you love him, and that maybe we all deserve a second chance at family, even if it looks different than what we expected." Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I will not let you down. I promise. Just do not try to save us. We have been saving ourselves for a long time. What we need is someone to stand with us. Can you do that?" "I can try. I want to try." They stood in the doorway as the sun rose higher, two people marked by loss, choosing despite their fear to reach for something beautiful. Inside, Leo slept peacefully. Around them, the gardens waited for spring, and in that moment, everything felt possible. It was, but it would not be easy, and the storm that was coming would test every word they had just spoken. But that was for later. For now, there was only the sunrise and the promise, and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could have this. They could be happy. They could be whole. They could be family. All they had to do was survive what came next. The key to the greenhouse felt like lead in Julian's hand. 2 months had passed since the hospital. 2 months of carefully built routine and slowly deepening trust. Amelia's gardens were coming back to life. Leo was thriving, his asthma better in the stable environment, his laughter becoming the soundtrack of the estate, and Julian was learning what it meant to be present, to be needed, to be something other than grief wrapped in expensive clothes. But the greenhouse remained locked, the one place he could not go, the one room where Sarah's memory lived untouched, perfectly preserved, slowly gathering dust. "You do not have to do this today," Amelia said. She stood beside him in the spring sunshine, her hands dirty from morning work, her face concerned. "Yes," Julian said, "I do." Leo bounced on his heels. "Is it really full of secret plants?" Julian managed a smile. "Something like that." The door opened with a groan that sounded like an ending and a beginning both. Inside, time had stopped. Pots of dried plants lined the tables. Tools hung neatly on walls. The air smelled of old soil and older memories. And there, on the workbench, Sarah's garden journal lay open to the last page she had written. Julian picked it up with shaking hands, his wife's handwriting familiar as his own heartbeat. The date was 3 days before she died. April 13th, 2018. The baby is due in 2 weeks, and I can barely move without help. But I had to come out here one last time before everything changes. I have been thinking about what I want to teach him. Not just about gardens, though there will be plenty of that, but about life, about how beautiful things can grow from darkness, about how patience and care and faith can turn a seed into something magnificent, about how nothing is truly dead if you are willing to tend it. I hope he grows up gentle. I hope he grows up kind. I hope Julian teaches him to be brave, because I will teach him to be soft, and a boy needs both. I hope we are good parents. I hope we figure this out together. I hope—" The entry ended there. No more words, just hope, unfinished. Julian's vision blurred. She never got to finish. Amelia moved to his side, reading over his shoulder. She did not have to. Look at what she was hoping for. Gentleness, kindness, bravery, softness. She was hoping for exactly what you are becoming. I failed her. She wanted me to teach our son to be brave, and I could not even save him. No. Amelia's voice was firm. You did not fail anyone. Sometimes life takes things from us that we cannot prevent. But Sarah was not hoping for a perfect life. She was hoping for a gentle one, a kind one, a brave one, and you are giving that to Leo. Maybe that is what she really wanted, not her son specifically, but those qualities in the world. And you are putting them there. Julian looked at Leo, who was carefully examining a dried fern as if it might spring back to life under his attention. Do you think it is wrong? That I love your son? That I think of him as mine? I think it is beautiful. I think Sarah would think it is beautiful too. Love does not betray the dead. It honors them by continuing. They began to clean. It was hard work, physically and emotionally. Every pot held a memory. Every tool had been in Sarah's hands. Every plant was something she had chosen, nurtured, cared for. But slowly, with Amelia's help and Leo's cheerful chaos, the greenhouse began to transform, not forgetting, remembering, but also making room for something new. By late afternoon, they had cleared the space. Empty tables waited for new life. Clean windows let in light that had been blocked for years. And Julian stood in the center of it, surrounded by his past and his future, and felt something settle in his chest. Thank you, he said to Amelia. For what? For helping me remember that closed doors can be opened, that dead things can be composted and become soil for new growth, that it is okay to move forward. That evening, after Leo was in bed, they sat in the greenhouse under the stars visible through the glass ceiling. Spring frogs sang in the pond beyond. Nightbirds called. The world was alive in ways Julian had stopped noticing. Tell me something you have never told anyone, Amelia said. Julian considered. I have not taken off my wedding ring since the funeral, not once in 7 years. It was like, if I took it off, I would be admitting she was really gone. Amelia looked at his left hand, where the gold band still circled his finger. And now I think maybe she has been really gone all along. And keeping the ring on has not brought her back. It has just kept me from moving forward. You do not have to take it off. I know, but maybe I want to. Maybe I am ready to put it somewhere safe, somewhere honored, but not on my hand. Is that wrong? It is human. Julian slowly, carefully slid the ring from his finger. He had not taken it off in so long that there was a pale line beneath it, a mark that would fade with time. He held the ring in his palm, feeling its weight, and then he placed it in the drawer of the workbench where Sarah's journal now rested. I will always love her, he said. I know. But I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Amelia's breath caught. Julian. You do not have to say anything. I just needed to tell you. I needed you to know that what I am feeling is not about replacing anyone. It is about discovering that my heart did not die with Sarah, that it can still feel, that you make me feel things I thought were gone forever. Amelia stood and moved to where he sat on the workbench. She took his face in her hands, her touch gentle, and looked into his eyes. I am terrified of this, of you, of what this could mean. I have spent so long protecting myself and Leo that I do not know how to let someone in. But you are already in, Julian. You have been in since that first night, and I do not know what that means or where this goes, but I know I do not want to run anymore. Then do not run. Stay. Build this with me. Let me be what you need. Let me love your son. Let me love you. She kissed him then. Really kissed him, not the brief touch from weeks ago, but something deeper. A promise. a choice, a beginning. And Julian, who had thought his capacity for joy died with his wife, felt something bloom in his chest that felt like springtime after years of winter. They did not make love that night. It was too soon, too fragile, too important to rush. But they held each other in the greenhouse where grief had lived and hope was growing, and they made promises with their bodies that words could not capture. To try, to stay, to be brave, to build something real from broken pieces. Outside, in the gardens they were restoring together, the first roses of the season began to bud. And in the cottage, Leo slept peacefully, unaware that his world was shifting in ways that would change everything. In Manhattan, Victoria Sterling hung up her phone and stared at the photograph her investigator had just emailed her. Julian, a woman, a child, all three of them smiling in a garden, all three of them looking like a family. She felt something cold settle in her chest. Betrayal, fury, determination. Sarah had been dead only 7 years, and Julian was already replacing her with some nobody, some woman with a past, some homeless person he had picked up like a stray. This could not be allowed to continue. Victoria made a call, then another, then a third. By midnight, she had set things in motion that could not be easily stopped. She did not see it as cruelty. She saw it as protection. Julian needed to be saved from himself, from this mistake, from the woman who was clearly using him. Sarah would have wanted Victoria to protect him. Sarah would have wanted this. At least, that was what Victoria told herself as she began to build her plan, as she found Marcus Bennett's name in court records, as she discovered his weakness for money, as she laid the groundwork for the custody battle that would nearly destroy everything Julian and Amelia were building. But that was still weeks away. For tonight, in the greenhouse, Julian and Amelia held each other and believed that the hardest part was behind them, that opening the greenhouse had been their supreme test, that everything from here would be easier. They were wrong, but they were also together, and sometimes that makes all the difference. The storm was coming, but first there would be more days of sunshine, more moments of Leo's laughter, more conversations that built intimacy, more small choices to trust and be trusted. The greenhouse, once a tomb, had become a garden again, and in that transformation was all the hope anyone needed, for now it was enough. Spring arrived in earnest, and with it came a rhythm that felt close to permanence, dangerously so. Mornings began with Leo racing from the cottage to the main house, bursting through the kitchen door with questions forming on his lips. Julian would be there, coffee in hand, ready to listen to theories about why earthworms preferred rain or how many seeds it took to make a garden. Amelia followed at a slower pace, savoring the walk through grounds that now bore the marks of her labor, the evidence of things coming back to life. They ate breakfast together most days, not because Julian required it, but because none of them wanted to eat alone. Mrs. Chen, who had worked for the Thorne family longer than Julian had been alive, watched these meals with satisfaction that went beyond professional pride. She had seen her employer transform from a man waiting to die into someone who checked his watch, not from boredom, but from anticipation of 5 o'clock, when work would end and evening would begin. "You should see your face when they arrive," she told Julian one afternoon as he prepared dinner. He had started cooking, something he had not done since Sarah's death, and tonight he was attempting his mother's recipe for pot roast. "What about my face?" Julian asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "It lights up, like someone switched on a lamp in a dark room. For 7 years, you have been dark. Now there is light." He wanted to deny it. He wanted to maintain some professional distance. But the truth was, he counted the minutes until Amelia finished in the gardens and brought Leo inside. He found excuses to be wherever they were. He taught Leo chess in the evenings. explaining strategy while the boy moved pieces with careful deliberation. He talked with Amelia about everything and nothing, discovering that she had opinions on literature and politics and human nature that made him see the world differently. And at night, alone in his room, he allowed himself to imagine a future that looked nothing like his past. A future where the cottage door opened and Amelia did not just work here, but lived here in every sense of the word. Where Leo called him something more than Mr. Julian. Where the ring he had finally removed from his finger stayed in that drawer, honored but not worn, a piece of history rather than a chain. But Victoria's phone calls were increasing. Once a week had become twice, then 3 times. Her voice carried notes of concern that felt more like interrogation. "You sound different, Julian." "I am fine, Victoria." "Are you still seeing that woman? The one you hired?" "Her name is Amelia. And yes, she works here. The gardens have never looked better." "I am sure they are lovely. But darling, people are talking. A homeless woman living on your estate with her child. It looks questionable." Julian's jaw tightened. "What looks questionable is you calling to discuss my private affairs." "I am family, Julian. Sarah's family. That makes your affairs my concern. Sarah has been gone for 7 years. I will always honor her memory, but I will not live the rest of my life as a monument to her death." The silence on the other end was sharp enough to cut. "I see. Well, I suppose there is nothing more to say, is there? Victoria, I did not mean—" But she had already hung up. Amelia noticed his tension that evening. They were in the greenhouse, planting tomato seedlings that Leo had started from seeds, and Julian's movements had lost their usual ease. "Want to talk about it?" she asked. "My late wife's aunt. She is concerned about my choices." "Meaning me?" Julian set down his trowel. "Meaning she has not moved on from Sarah's death and believes I should not either. But this is not about you specifically. It is about her inability to accept change. People judge. I am used to it. You should not have to be." She smiled, but it did not quite reach her eyes. "Julian, I was homeless. I have a son with no father in the picture. I am living in a cottage on a millionaire's estate. People are going to draw conclusions. Some of them will be ugly. That is the price of this? There should not be a price. But there is, and I need you to understand that I am willing to pay it, for stability, for Leo, for—" She stopped, her cheeks coloring. "For this, whatever this is." Julian moved closer, his hand finding hers in the soil they were working. "What if I want this to be more than whatever? What if I am terrified of what more means? Then we are both terrified together. Is that enough?" Before she could answer, Leo burst into the greenhouse with news that he had seen a bird's nest in the oak tree, and could they please check if there were eggs? The moment passed, but the question hung between them, patient and waiting. That night, Julian made a decision. He took out his laptop and began researching engagement rings, not because he was ready to propose immediately, but because he wanted to be prepared when the moment came. He wanted something simple, classic, something that honored both her strength and her gentleness, something that said, "I choose you, not as a replacement for what I lost, but as exactly who you are." He found it on a jeweler's website in New Haven, a platinum band with a single stone, elegant and understated. He could drive there tomorrow, see it in person, have it sized, keep it until the right moment. He was adding it to his cart when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost did not answer. "Mr. Thorne, my name is Detective Sarah Michaels. I'm calling from the New Haven Police Department. We received a report that you hired a private investigator to locate Marcus Bennett. I need to ask you some questions about that." Julian's blood went cold. Yes, I hired someone, but it was just to confirm his location, to make sure he was not looking for Miss Hayes and her son." "I understand. The thing is, Mr. Thorne, Marcus Bennett has also hired someone, a lawyer. He is filing for custody of Leo Hayes, and he is claiming that you are the reason he is doing so, that your interference in his family is forcing him to assert his parental rights. I need you to come in and give a statement." The world tilted. He has not seen his son in 6 years. He has no rights. That is for the courts to decide. But I wanted to give you a heads up. Papers will be served to Miss Hayes within the week. You might want to make sure she has legal representation. After the detective hung up, Julian sat in the dark and understood that he had just made a terrible mistake. In his desire to protect Amelia, he had drawn attention to her. He had poked a bear that might have stayed sleeping. And now that bear was coming for Leo. He should tell her. He should go to the cottage right now and explain what he had done. But shame kept him frozen. Shame and the sick certainty that she would see this as exactly what it was. Him trying to control things. Him using his money and power to solve problems. Him proving that he was not different from every other man who thought he knew what was best. He went to bed that night without telling her. It was the first secret he had kept since they met. It would not be the last. 3 days later, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the cottage door. Amelia answered with flour on her hands from making bread, Leo at the kitchen table doing math problems, and her world ended in the time it took to read 3 pages of legal documents. Marcus Bennett, biological father, petitioning for joint custody. Citing mother's history of unstable housing, citing inappropriate living situation with male employer, citing isolation from paternal family, seeking immediate visitation and shared decision-making authority. Amelia read it twice, then a 3rd time. Then she walked with forced calm to her bedroom, closed the door, and screamed into a pillow until her throat was raw. When she emerged, Julian was there. Mrs. Chen must have called him from the main house. He stood in her living room, and the look on his face told her that he already knew. "Did you do this?" Her voice was quiet, deadly. "I hired someone to find him, to make sure he was not looking for you. I never contacted him. You hired someone." She laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You hired someone to investigate the father of my child without asking me, without telling me, and now he is coming for Leo." "I was trying to protect you, by taking away my choice, by making decisions about my son without including me. That is not protection, Julian. That is control. I did not think..." "No, you did not think. You threw money at a problem because that is what you do. You are Julian Thorne, master of the universe, and surely your resources can fix anything. Except some things cannot be fixed with money. Some things require trust and partnership and asking before acting, and you did none of that." "Amelia, please. Get out. Let me help. Let me hire you a lawyer. Let you what? Let you swoop in and save me. Let you prove that I need you, that I cannot handle my own life. This is exactly what I was afraid of, exactly why I did not want to trust this." She gestured between them. "Men like you always think you know better, always think your money and power mean you get to make choices for other people. Well, congratulations, Julian. Your protection just put my son in danger. That is not fair." "Fair?" Her voice rose. "You want to talk about fair? My son, who has not seen his father in 6 years, who does not even remember the man who hurt me, now has to go before a judge and be questioned about his life because you could not trust me to handle my own past. Get out. Get out of my cottage. Get out of my life. And stay away from Leo." Julian opened his mouth to argue, to explain, to beg, but the look in her eyes stopped him. He had seen that look before. In the hospital when Leo could not breathe, maternal fury, primal protection, the look of a woman who would burn the world to keep her child safe. He left, and Amelia collapsed on her couch and cried for the 2nd time since arriving at the estate. But this time there was no one to hold her. This time she was alone with her fear and her fury and the papers that said someone was coming to take her son. In the main house, Julian stood in his study and called his lawyer. Then he called his accountant. Then he called everyone he knew who might be able to help. And with each call, he proved Amelia's point, that his first instinct was to solve, to fix, to control. It was Mrs. Chen who finally stopped him. She walked into his study at midnight, found him on his 7th call, and simply took the phone from his hand. "Enough. I have to fix this. You cannot fix this. You can only support her through it. And right now, she does not want your support. She wants you to respect her enough to let her lead. But I have resources. You have love. That is all you have that matters. Everything else is just noise. And if you do not learn that now, you will lose her forever." Julian looked at this woman who had known him since he was a boy, who had held him through every crisis of his life, and he finally understood. "I have already lost her, haven't I? Not yet, but you will if you do not change, if you do not learn that loving someone means sometimes standing back and letting them fight their own battles, even when it terrifies you, even when you have the power to intervene, especially then." In the cottage, Amelia lay awake and thought about running. It was her first instinct, honed by 6 years of survival. Pack the bag, wake Leo, disappear into the night. But where would they go? And why should she have to run again? Why should Marcus get to chase her from the first safe place she had found in years? She thought about Julian's face when she told him to leave, the way he had looked like she had struck him, the hurt in his eyes, and beneath her fury, beneath her fear, there was something else, sadness, because she had been falling in love with him. Because, for the first time in her life, she had been letting herself believe in partnership, and he had proven that even good men, even loving men, could not resist the urge to control. Sleep did not come, but by dawn she had made a decision. She would not run. She would fight. She would hire a lawyer, not Julian's lawyer, but her own. She would tell her story. She would prove that she was a good mother, that Leo was safe and loved and thriving. And she would do it herself. Julian could help if she asked, but only if she asked, and only on her terms. It was not forgiveness, but it was a start. The lawyer's office was in a building that had seen better decades, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. Amelia had found her through Mrs. Chen, who knew everyone in Connecticut and seemed to have a network that rivaled the FBI. Her name was Margaret Cross, and she had kind eyes behind severe glasses and a reputation for winning impossible cases. "Tell me everything," Margaret said, pen poised over her legal pad. "Start at the beginning. Do not leave anything out, even if you think it makes you look bad, especially if you think it makes you look bad." So Amelia told her about Marcus, about the hospital visits she had hidden from friends, about leaving in the night when Leo was 6 months old, about the years of moving, hiding, surviving, about the bus stop, about Julian, about the cottage and the job and the gardens, about falling in love despite her fear, about the private investigator she had not known existed. Margaret took notes without judgment. When Amelia finished, the lawyer sat back and studied her. "You have a strong case. Good mother, stable housing, child thriving. Father has been absent for 6 years. No child support paid. No contact attempted until now. But Marcus's lawyer is expensive. Someone is bankrolling this. And they're going to argue that your housing is not stable because it depends on your relationship with Julian Thorne. They're going to paint you as a gold digger. They're going to suggest that Leo is being used as a meal ticket. And they are going to question whether an environment where his mother is romantically involved with her employer is appropriate. I am not a gold digger. I know that, but we need to prove it. And the best way to prove it is to show that you have been a devoted mother despite impossible circumstances, that you have chosen Leo's welfare over your own comfort at every turn, that your relationship with Julian is genuine and based on mutual respect, not economic dependency. How do I prove all that? Margaret smiled. You tell your story, publicly. You own it. You take away their ammunition by being honest about everything. The abuse, the escape, the homelessness, the struggles. And you show that through it all, Leo has been loved and protected and raised by a mother who would walk through fire for him. You want me to go public? To talk about Marcus? About being homeless? I want you to take control of the narrative. Right now, someone else is writing your story. Write it yourself, and while you are at it, we use that publicity to apply pressure. Domestic violence survivors speaking out, media attention on custody laws. Make this about more than just you. Make it about every woman who has ever had to run from an abuser and then fight to keep her children safe. Amelia felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, power. I can do that. Good, because we have 3 weeks until the preliminary hearing, and I'm going to need you to be brave in ways you have never been brave before. When Amelia left the lawyer's office, she felt different. Not smaller under the weight of what was coming, but larger, expanded by the possibility that her pain could serve a purpose, that her story could help someone else. That fighting for Leo might mean fighting for all the Leos out there with mothers who were tired of running. Julian was waiting in the parking lot. She had not told him she would be there, but somehow he had known. Or Mrs. Chen had told him. Either way, he stood by his Mercedes, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way she had never seen him look before. I am not here to interfere, he said before she could speak. I just wanted to be here. In case you needed anything, in case you wanted to talk, in case you just needed someone to sit with you while you processed. But if you want me to leave, I will leave. Amelia studied him. The man who had stopped at a traffic light. The man who had opened his home. The man who had made her believe in safety. The man who had also violated her trust by acting without permission. Did you know what your investigator was going to do? She asked. No. I just wanted to know where Marcus was, to make sure he was not coming. I never imagined that someone would use that information to push him toward custody. Who would do that? Julian hesitated. I think Victoria, Sarah's aunt. She has been increasingly hostile about you and Leo being here, and she has the resources to hire Marcus a lawyer. So this is not really about Leo at all. This is about you. About controlling you. I am so sorry, Amelia. I was trying to protect you, and instead I made you a target. She wanted to stay angry. Anger was safer than the complicated mess of feelings underneath. But looking at his face, at the genuine remorse there, she could not hold on to it. I am going public with my story, she said. My lawyer thinks it is the best strategy. Control the narrative. Show that I am not hiding anything. That is brave. That is terrifying. But so is losing Leo. And I would rather be scared and fighting than scared and passive. Will you support that? Even if it means my face is going to be all over the news, even if it means people asking you questions about our relationship? I will support anything you need, on your terms. I am done trying to fix things for you. From now on, I just stand beside you and follow your lead. Can you do that? Can you really let me lead when your instinct is to take over? Julian stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that she could feel his presence. I can try, and when I fail, because I probably will sometimes, you call me on it. You remind me. You tell me to step back, and I will. Because losing you is not an option, Amelia. Making you feel controlled or diminished or less than the incredible woman you are is not an option. I will learn. I promise you, I will learn. She believed him. Maybe she was a fool to believe him, but she did. Okay, then here is what I need. I need you to be honest with me, about Victoria, about your past, about everything. No more surprises, no more secrets, no more finding out things after the fact. Done. And I need you to remember that Leo is my son. If we are going to be, whatever we are going to be, you can be part of his life. But I make the final decisions. I am his mother. That does not change. Agreed. And if I ask you to back off, you back off. No questions, no arguments. You trust that I know what I am doing. I can do that. She nodded slowly. Then we do this together. But my way, my fight, my choices, you support, you do not lead. Can you live with that? I can live with that. They stood in the parking lot of a lawyer's office in a building that had seen better days, and they made a new agreement. Not the easy agreement of early love, where everything is possibility and nothing has been tested, but the harder agreement of two people who had seen each other's worst instincts and chosen to try anyway. Julian reached for her hand. She let him take it, and together they walked to his car, ready to face whatever came next. The war for Leo was beginning, but they would fight it as partners, flawed, scared, determined partners who had learned that love was not about perfection. It was about showing up, making mistakes, owning them, and choosing each other again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The interview was scheduled for the local evening news. Amelia sat in the makeup chair and watched herself transform into someone camera-ready while her insides churned. The producer, a woman named Janet with efficient hands and a kind smile, explained what would happen. Sarah is going to ask you about your story, your relationship with Marcus, the escape, the years of moving around, how you ended up at Julian Thorne's estate, your relationship with him, the custody filing. Just tell the truth. Be yourself. People respond to authenticity. I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing. There is no wrong thing. You are a mother fighting for her son. That is the story. Everything else is just details. When the cameras started rolling, Amelia forced herself to breathe. The reporter, Sarah Mitchell, had a face that belonged on national news, but a voice that felt like a friend. Amelia Hayes, thank you for being here. This cannot be easy. It is not, but it is necessary. Tell us about Marcus Bennett. So Amelia did. She told about meeting him when she was vulnerable, about the slow escalation of control, about the first time he hit her and she believed it was an accident, about the second time and the promises, about being pregnant and realizing that if she stayed, her son would grow up watching violence, about leaving with nothing but the clothes she wore. She told about shelters, about jobs that paid under the table because she was afraid to use her real name, about Leo's asthma and the terror of hospital visits without insurance, about the bus stop on that January night, exhausted beyond measure, and the man who stopped his car and offered her a job. She told about Julian, about his grief, about the gardens, about falling in love despite her fear, about Leo thriving for the first time in his life, about feeling safe. And then she told about the custody filing, about Marcus, who had not seen his son in 6 years, suddenly claiming parental rights, about the fear that her past would be weaponized, about the determination to fight anyway. What do you want people to understand? Sarah asked. That survivors are not broken. We are fighters. And when we run, it is not because we are weak. It is because we are strong enough to choose life over a relationship that is killing us. I want people to understand that homelessness does not make someone a bad mother. Poverty does not make someone a bad mother. What makes you a bad mother is not protecting your child. And I have protected Leo every single day of his life. That will not change, not for Marcus, not for any court, not for anyone. The interview went viral within hours. The video was shared thousands of times. Amelia's face was everywhere. Domestic violence organizations reached out. Other survivors told their stories in the comments, and while there were cruel voices, there were more kind ones, more people saying, I believe you, I support you, you are not alone. But Victoria Sterling was watching too, and she was not pleased. She made a phone call to Marcus Bennett's lawyer. The media sympathy is a problem. We need to change tactics. Make this about the child's welfare, not her past. Argue that the publicity is harmful to Leo, that Julian Thorne's wealth and influence are destabilizing factors, that a 6-year-old should not be part of a media circus. The lawyer agreed, and so the strategy shifted. 2 days after Amelia's interview, Marcus's legal team released a statement. They expressed sympathy for Miss Hayes's difficult past, but they questioned whether a child with asthma should be living in the spotlight, whether the stress of media attention was therapeutic, whether Julian Thorne's involvement was really in Leo's best interest or just another wealthy man playing savior. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, Amelia was not just a survivor. She was a woman using her son for publicity, using her story for sympathy, using Julian Thorne for security. The cruel voices got louder. Julian found her in the cottage one evening, reading comments on her phone, tears streaming down her face. They are calling me a liar. They are saying I made it all up for attention. They are saying Leo would be better off with his father. His father, Julian, the man who put me in the hospital. Julian took the phone from her hands and set it aside. Those people do not matter. The judge matters. Your lawyer matters. The truth matters. Everything else is just noise. It does not feel like noise. It feels like 1,000 voices telling me I am not good enough, that I am ruining my son's life. You are saving your son's life. You saved it when you left Marcus. You saved it every day you kept him safe and fed and loved, despite having nothing. You saved it when you accepted my job offer instead of staying proud and staying on the streets. And you are saving it now by fighting. Do not let strangers who do not know you make you doubt that. She leaned into him, and he held her while she cried. And somewhere in that embrace, something shifted. The anger from before had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something more complex. Understanding, forgiveness, the recognition that they were both imperfect people trying their best. I am sorry, Julian said into her hair, for the investigator, for making this worse, for everything. I know, and I am sorry for being so harsh. You were trying to help. In the wrong way. In your way. Which was not my way, but your heart was in the right place. My heart is wherever you are, Amelia, and it will stay there no matter what happens in court, no matter what anyone says. I am not going anywhere. She pulled back to look at him. Promise me something. Promise that if the judge rules against me, if they give Marcus custody or visitation or anything, you will not try to fix it with money. You will not bribe officials or threaten lawyers or do any of the things that men with resources do when they think they know better. Promise you will let the system work, even if we do not like the outcome. I cannot promise that. If they try to give Leo to Marcus, I will fight with everything I have, but not alone, not without me, not making decisions without including me. That is what I am asking. Fight with me, not for me. Can you promise that? Julian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I can promise that. We fight together. Your choices. Your lead. I just walk beside you and hold your hand when it gets hard. It is going to get harder. I know, but we will get through it. Together. In Manhattan, Victoria Sterling received the report she had been waiting for. The private investigator had found everything. Amelia's real name before she changed it unofficially. The hospitals where Marcus had taken her after he hurt her. The shelters where she had stayed. The churches that had given her food. Every detail of 6 years of survival, documented and ready to be used. Victoria looked at the file and felt something cold and satisfied settle in her chest. This was not cruelty. This was protection. Julian needed to see what kind of woman he was involving himself with, what kind of instability he was bringing into his life. Sarah would have wanted her to protect him. Sarah would have understood. Victoria picked up the phone and called Marcus's lawyer. "I have some information you might find useful for the depositions. Let us make sure the judge understands exactly who Amelia Hayes really is." The pieces were moving, the battle lines were drawn, and in 2 weeks they would all stand before a judge and fight for the future of one small boy who deserved better than to be a pawn in games played by adults. But for tonight, in the cottage, Amelia and Julian held each other and believed that love might be enough, that truth might win, that justice might prevail. They were partially right. Justice would prevail, but not without cost. Love would be enough, but not without testing. And truth would win, but first it would have to survive being twisted by people who saw a child, not as a person but as a weapon. The storm was here, and all they could do was hold on to each other and refuse to let go. The deposition took place in a conference room that smelled like fear and old coffee. Amelia sat across from Marcus's lawyer, a man named Patterson with silver hair and a shark's smile, and tried to remember Margaret's advice. Tell the truth. Do not let them make you angry. Stay calm. But Patterson was very good at his job. "Miss Hayes, is it true that you have used multiple names over the past 6 years? I was running from an abusive partner. I needed to stay hidden. So you lied about your identity repeatedly. I survived. If that required deception, then yes, I deceived. And is it not true that you have worked numerous jobs under the table, evading taxes?" "I worked jobs that paid cash because I could not risk official paperwork that Marcus could trace. As soon as I was in a stable situation with Mr. Thorne, I began paying taxes again." "Mr. Thorne, let us talk about him. How long after meeting him did you begin a romantic relationship?" "We are not in a romantic relationship." "No, you have been photographed holding hands. You spend evenings together. You allow him unsupervised access to your son. That sounds romantic to me. We care about each other. But we are not what? Not lovers? Not planning a future, Miss Hayes? Are you denying that you moved into Julian Thorne's estate with the intention of securing your financial future through a relationship with a wealthy man?" Margaret stood. "Objection. Asked and answered. Counsel is badgering the witness." But the damage was done. The implication hung in the air. Gold digger, opportunist, woman using her son as a stepping stone to wealth. Julian's deposition was worse. Patterson went straight for the throat. "Mr. Thorne, your wife died in childbirth 7 years ago, correct?" "Yes." "And your son died as well?" "Yes." "That must have been devastating." "It was. So devastating that you shut down emotionally, isolated yourself, rejected all social contact. Your own words in therapy sessions that are part of the public record from your competency hearing to run your company." Julian's lawyer stood. "That hearing was sealed. And yet here we are, Mr. Thorne. Is it not true that you see Leo Hayes as a replacement for the son you lost?" "No, I see Leo as himself. A wonderful, smart, funny boy who deserves to be protected. Protected from his biological father. Protected from a man who hurt his mother, who abandoned him for 6 years, who is only seeking custody because someone is paying him to do so. Those are serious accusations. Do you have proof?" Julian looked at Patterson and understood the trap. If he admitted knowing about Victoria, he looked like a conspiracy theorist. If he stayed silent, he looked like he was making excuses. "I have suspicions." "Suspicions are not facts, Mr. Thorne. Let me ask you something else. Did you hire a private investigator to locate Marcus Bennett?" "I did." "Why?" "To make sure he was not looking for Amelia and Leo. To ensure they were safe." "Without Miss Hayes's knowledge or permission?" Julian hesitated. "Yes." "So you took it upon yourself to investigate the father of her child without consulting her, without respecting her agency?" Because you, a wealthy man, believed you knew better than she did how to handle her own life. It was not like that. Then what was it like? Explain to me how hiring an investigator behind her back is respectful, how it is partnership, how it is anything other than a powerful man exerting control over a vulnerable woman. Julian had no answer that would not make things worse. When they left the deposition, Amelia was shaking with fury. They made me sound like a criminal, like I am the problem, not Marcus. That is their job, to make you look bad. Did you hear what he said about you? About replacing your son? About control? I heard. They drove in silence for a while. Then Amelia said, "This is going to get worse, is it not?" "Yes, and we might lose, but we might win, and we have to believe we will win, or we have already lost." That night, Julian could not sleep. He stood in his study at 3 in the morning, staring at the phone, debating. Finally, he dialed Victoria's number. She answered on the first ring. "Julian, what a surprise." "You are behind this. The lawyer Marcus hired, the custody filing. The deposition questions about therapy I never knew were in a public record. You did this. I protected you. From a mistake. From a woman who is using you. From forgetting Sarah. Sarah is dead, Victoria, and I loved her. But I cannot spend the rest of my life loving a ghost. I have to live, and Amelia and Leo make me want to live." "Then you are weak, and you are dishonoring my niece's memory." "No, I am honoring it by doing what she would want, by being happy, by loving, by opening my heart even though it terrifies me. Sarah would want that for me, you know she would. What I know is that you are not thinking clearly. That woman has gotten her hooks into you, and when this blows up, when she leaves and takes your money, you will realize I was right. If she leaves, it will be because you drove her away, and I will never forgive you for that. Do you understand? You do this, you destroy them, and you lose me. Forever." "You do not mean that. I have never meant anything more in my life. Back off, Victoria. Call off your dogs. Let the courts decide this without your interference, or I will cut you out of my life completely. I will make sure you never hear from me again. And I will tell anyone who asks exactly what you did, your reputation, your social standing, everything you have built. I will destroy it." The line was silent for a long moment. Then Victoria said, "You would really choose them over me, over Sarah's family. I am choosing life over grief, and if you cannot understand that, then we have nothing left to say to each other." He hung up and immediately regretted the threat, because threatening Victoria would only make her more determined. But he was so tired of her manipulation, so tired of her using Sarah's memory as a weapon, so tired of pretending that mourning forever was somehow noble. In the cottage, Amelia lay awake too, and for the first time since the custody papers arrived, she let herself think about losing, about Leo being handed to Marcus for visits, about having to send her son away, knowing what Marcus was capable of, about living with the fear that each visit might be the last time she saw Leo whole and healthy and safe. She thought about running again, but she was so tired of running. And this time, she had something she had never had before. She had Julian, flawed, controlling, but genuinely loving Julian. She had Mrs. Chen. She had Margaret. She had a community forming around her. She had the viral video that had connected her to thousands of other survivors. She had an army, small, imperfect, but fierce, and together, maybe they could win this. Sleep finally came as the sun began to rise, and her last thought before unconsciousness was a prayer to whatever forces governed the universe. Please, please let me keep my son. I will do anything, give anything, be anything. Just let me keep my son. In 2 days, they would stand before a judge, and all the prayers, all the preparation, all the love in the world would have to be enough. It would be. But not in the way they expected, not in the way they hoped, and not without cost. The supreme ordeal was here. The courtroom was smaller than Amelia had imagined. She had pictured something grand, dramatic, like on television. But this was just a room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs and a judge who looked tired before the day even began. Marcus sat at the opposite table. Amelia had not seen him in 6 years, and the sight of him made her throat close. He looked older, heavier, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, and focused on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Julian sat in the gallery behind Amelia, close enough that she could feel his presence, but far enough that he was not part of the proceedings. His hands were clenched in his lap. Mrs. Chen sat beside him, a grandmother figure in a story that needed all the supporting players it could get. The judge, a woman named Castellanos with silver hair and steel in her eyes, called the court to order. This is a preliminary hearing on custody arrangements for Leo Hayes, age 6. I have reviewed the filings from both parties. I have read the depositions, and I must say this is one of the more complicated cases I have seen in a while. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Bennett, you have been absent from your son's life for 6 years. You have paid no child support. You have made no attempts at contact. Why the sudden interest in custody? Marcus's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client deeply regrets his absence. He was struggling with substance abuse issues and believed that removing himself from Leo's life was the loving thing to do. He has since gotten sober, found steady employment, and completed a parenting course. He wants to be a father to his son. Judge Castellanos looked unimpressed, and the timing, right after Miss Hayes found stable housing and a support system. Coincidental, Your Honor. My client only recently learned of their location. He wants to reconnect, I see. The judge turned to Amelia. Miss Hayes, tell me about your relationship with Julian Thorne. Amelia stood. He is my employer and my friend. He gave me a job when I had nothing. He has been kind to my son. But this is not about him. This is about Marcus, who hurt me, who made me afraid for my life, who I had to escape from to protect Leo. Do you have documentation of the abuse? Margaret stood. Hospital records, Your Honor. Witness statements from shelter workers, photographs. It is all in our filing. And Mr. Bennett, do you deny these accusations? Marcus stood. His lawyer had coached him with care. He looked remorseful, broken, reformed. I was a different person then, Your Honor. I had problems, anger issues. I hurt Amelia, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I have changed. I am sober. I am in therapy. I want to make amends. I want to know my son. It was a good performance, and watching him, Amelia felt something cold settle in her stomach. He was believable, he was sympathetic, and judges wanted to believe that people could change. I am going to speak with Leo, Judge Castellanos said, in chambers. Without either parent present, I want to understand what he wants, what he needs, and I want to do it without the pressure of you both watching. Amelia's heart stopped. Your Honor, he is only 6. He is going to be scared. I am very good with children, Miss Hayes. I will make sure he is comfortable. Bailiff, please bring Leo in. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Amelia's life. She sat in the courtroom, unable to move, barely breathing, while somewhere behind a closed door, a stranger questioned her son about his life, about Julian, about his father, about whether he felt safe. When Leo emerged, he went straight to Amelia, ignoring Marcus entirely. Mom, the judge was nice. She asked about my asthma, about Mr. Julian, about the gardens. I told her I love it at the estate. I told her Mr. Julian reads to me every night. I told her I do not remember the man over there. He pointed at Marcus without looking at him. Was that okay? You did perfect, baby, perfect. Judge Castellanos returned to the bench. I have made a decision on temporary arrangements pending the full custody hearing in 6 months. Amelia's world narrowed to the judge's lips. Everything hung on the next words. Mr. Bennett, you will have supervised visitation once a month, 2 hours, at a neutral location with a court-appointed supervisor present. Miss Hayes retains primary custody, however. The judge paused. I am troubled by the involvement of Julian Thorne in this case. While I appreciate that he has provided housing and employment, the line between employer and family seems blurred. I am ordering a home study of Miss Hayes's living situation. I want to ensure that Leo's environment is stable and appropriate. That hearing will be in 6 months. At that time, we will determine permanent custody arrangements. The gavel came down, and Amelia felt something between relief and terror. They had not lost Leo, but they had not won either. And now a stranger would come to the estate and judge whether their unconventional family was good enough. Outside the courtroom, they were mobbed by reporters, cameras, questions, shouting. Julian shielded Amelia and Leo with his body, guiding them to his car. But one reporter got through. Miss Hayes, do you have any comment on Victoria Sterling's involvement in this case? Amelia stopped. What? Victoria Sterling, Julian Thorne's late wife's aunt. She has been funding Marcus Bennett's legal fees. Did you know? Everything stopped. Amelia turned to Julian. Did you know? His face was answer enough. You knew she was doing this, and you did not tell me. I only found out a few days ago. I confronted her. I told her to back off. And you did not think I had a right to know. You did not think I should be prepared for that. I did not want to add to your stress. By keeping secrets, by deciding what I can handle. That is not protection, Julian. That is control. Again. Victoria Sterling stepped out of a car 20 feet away. Perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. And when she saw them, she smiled. Julian, darling, I hope you do not mind that I attended the hearing. I wanted to make sure justice was served. Justice. Amelia stepped forward. You paid Marcus. You paid him to come after my son. You funded this entire case to hurt me. I funded Mr. Bennett's pursuit of his parental rights. There is nothing illegal about that. And frankly, dear, I think a child deserves to know his father. He deserves to be safe, and you are using him as a weapon to control Julian, to keep him trapped in grief. Because if he moves on from Sarah, what does that make you? Just a lonely woman whose only identity is a dead person's aunt. Victoria's smile disappeared. You have no idea what you are talking about. I know exactly what I am talking about. I know grief. I know pain, but I also know that love means wanting the people you care about to be happy, even if their happiness does not include you. Julian loves Sarah, but she is gone. And you are so busy worshipping her memory that you cannot see you are destroying him. That is enough, Julian said quietly. Victoria, you are done. Do you hear me? You are never welcome at my estate again. You are never to contact me or Amelia or Leo. If you continue to interfere, I will pursue legal action, harassment, witness tampering. Whatever my lawyers can make stick. You wanted war. You have it. But you are going to lose. Victoria looked at him, and for a moment her mask cracked. Underneath was not hatred. It was devastation. Sarah would be ashamed of you, choosing this woman over family, over loyalty, over everything we built. Sarah would be ashamed of you, Julian said, for weaponizing her memory, for using her death as an excuse to manipulate and control. She was kind, Victoria. She was generous. She believed in second chances. If she could see what you have done, she would not recognize you. Victoria stood there, surrounded by reporters and cameras, and something in her broke. She turned and walked to her car without another word, and as she drove away, Amelia felt something unexpected, not triumph, pity, because Victoria Sterling had loved her niece so much that she had forgotten how to love anything else, had made grief into an identity, had chosen to be a monument to the dead instead of a living person with her own life. And now she was alone, having destroyed the last connection she had to Sarah by trying to preserve it. In the car, Leo fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the day. Amelia and Julian sat in the front seats, neither speaking, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. "I should have told you," Julian said finally, "about Victoria. I was wrong." "Yes, you were." "I keep making the same mistake, trying to protect you by controlling information, trying to fix things instead of trusting you to handle them. Are you going to keep making that mistake?" Julian was quiet. Then, "I do not know. I want to say no. I want to promise I will be different. But the truth is, when I love someone, my instinct is to shield them from pain, to take on the burden myself, to solve the problem. And I do not know how to turn that off. I'm not asking you to turn it off. I'm asking you to include me, to respect me enough to let me be part of the decisions, to trust that I am strong enough to handle hard things. Can you do that?" "I can try. And when I fail, you call me on it, and I do better the next time. Is that enough?" Amelia looked at this man who had stopped at a traffic light and changed her life, who had given her safety and hope and love, even when he did not know how to show it without trying to control it, who was flawed and stubborn and broken in all the ways that matched her own brokenness. "Marry me," Julian said suddenly. "What?" He pulled a ring box from his jacket pocket. How long had he been carrying it? How many times had he almost asked? "Marry me. Let me adopt Leo. Make me his legal father, so that the next time we stand in front of a judge, I am not just the employer in the background, I am his parent. I want to be his parent, Amelia, not to replace Marcus, not to fix anything, but because I love him, because I love you, because you are my family now, and I want the law to recognize what my heart already knows. Marry me." This is not the romantic proposal I imagined. Nothing about us has been what anyone imagined. But it is real, and it is ours, and I want to keep it. Do you? Amelia looked at the ring, simple, beautiful, chosen with care. Then she looked at Leo sleeping in the back seat, then at Julian, with his heart in his eyes and his flaws on full display, and his love as real as anything she had ever felt. "Yes," she said, "yes, I will marry you, and yes, you can adopt Leo. And yes, we will figure out how to be a family even when it is messy and complicated, and nothing like what either of us planned. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sat in the parking lot of a courthouse, with their son sleeping in the back, and they chose each other. Again, despite everything, because of everything, the battle was not over. 6 months until the final hearing, 6 months of supervised visits, 6 months of waiting to see if Marcus would really be in their lives forever, 6 months of a home study and judgment and scrutiny, but they would face it together, as partners, as equals, as a family that was already real, no matter what any court said. And for now, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The engagement announcement made headlines, though not in the way Amelia had hoped. The comments were split down the middle. Eve saw a beautiful love story, 2 broken people finding healing in each other. A wealthy man choosing to build a family with a woman who had nothing but her courage and her son. The other half saw calculation, a homeless woman securing her future by getting a ring from a billionaire, a custody battle conveniently timed with a proposal. Margaret, the lawyer, called it strategic gold. Public opinion matters. A married couple adopting together looks different than a single mother with a live-in boyfriend. The judge will see stability, commitment, legal protection for Leo. The wedding was planned for 3 weeks out. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Mrs. Chen insisted on organizing everything, and Amelia learned quickly that arguing with Mrs. Chen was like arguing with gravity, pointless and exhausting. But first, there was the visit. The supervised visit with Marcus that the judge had ordered. 2 hours in a neutral location with a social worker present. 2 hours that Amelia dreaded with every fiber of her being. The community center was cheerful to the point of aggression. Bright walls, children's drawings, the smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask years of use. The social worker, a woman named Patricia with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, explained the rules to Marcus before Leo arrived. You do not ask about where he lives. You do not pump him for information about his mother or Julian Thorne. You do not make promises you cannot keep. You do not criticize his mother. This time is about getting to know your son, not gathering ammunition for court. Understood? Marcus nodded, but Amelia saw it in his eyes. The calculation, the performance. He was here because someone was paying him to be here, because Victoria had made it worth his while. Not because he actually wanted to be a father. When they brought Leo in, the boy went very still. Amelia had prepared him as best she could, explained that his birth father wanted to see him, that it was only for a little while, that Mom and Mr. Julian would be right outside the door, but preparation could not erase fear. Hey, buddy. Marcus crouched down, trying to make himself smaller, less threatening. I am Marcus. I am your dad. Leo looked at his mother. Amelia nodded encouragement she did not feel. Leo turned back to Marcus. I already have a dad, Mr. Julian. The words hung in the air. Marcus's smile tightened. Well, Mr. Julian is not your real dad. I am. I am the one who... I am your father. You are the man who hurt my mom. She told me. Leo, why do not you show Marcus the puzzle we have over here? I hear you are good at puzzles. Patricia stepped in with practiced ease. The 2 hours crawled by like wounded animals. Amelia and Julian sat in the waiting room, unable to hear what was happening but feeling every second like a knife. When the door opened and Leo emerged, he ran straight to Amelia without looking back. In the car, he was quiet. Too quiet. Finally, he said, Do I have to see him again? The judge said once a month for now. He asked about the house, about if we have a pool, about if Mr. Julian buys me things. He did not ask about my favorite color, or my friends, or if I'm good at reading. He just asked about stuff. Julian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Amelia reached back and took Leo's hand. I am sorry, baby, I am so sorry. Can we go home now? I want to work in the greenhouse. Home, the cottage, the estate, the gardens. That was home now. And Marcus, who had contributed nothing but DNA, was the intruder. That night, after Leo was asleep, Amelia and Julian made a decision. They would fight for full custody, no more visits. They would ask the court to terminate Marcus's parental rights entirely. It was a long shot. Courts generally favored keeping biological parents in the picture, but they had ammunition now. Marcus's obvious disinterest, his focus on material things rather than his son, his inability to even ask basic questions about Leo's life. Margaret agreed to file the motion, but she warned them, this will make Marcus and Victoria fight harder. They will come at you with everything. Are you prepared for that? We are prepared, Amelia said, and she meant it. The wedding dress shopping happened on a Tuesday afternoon with Mrs. Chen as her only companion. They went to a small boutique in New Haven, the kind of place that smelled like lavender and possibility. Amelia had never imagined shopping for a wedding dress. After Marcus, she had thought that part of her life was over, that she would raise Leo alone and be fine with it, that love was a luxury she could not afford. But here she was, trying on white dresses while Mrs. Chen offered opinions in the frank way of someone who had earned the right to brutal honesty. Too much lace. Makes you look like a doily. Too modern. You need something classic. Now that is the one. The dress was simple, ivory silk that flowed rather than puffed, cap sleeves, a neckline that was modest but beautiful, nothing that screamed money or status, just elegant simplicity that made Amelia feel like a bride rather than a refugee playing dress-up. In the dressing room mirror, she cried, not sad tears, not overwhelmed tears, just the release of 7 years of believing she did not deserve beautiful things. Mrs. Chen knocked. "Are you decent? Come in." The older woman entered and saw Amelia's tears. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around her and held her the way mothers hold daughters. And Amelia, who had not had a mother's embrace since she was 19, let herself be held. "You are going to be beautiful," Mrs. Chen said, "and happy and loved, and no one can take that from you. Not Marcus, not Victoria, not the doubts in your own head. You deserve this, Amelia Hayes. You deserve all of it." Meanwhile, Julian was dress shopping of a different sort. He and Leo stood in a menswear store, the boy trying on a tiny suit that made him look like a miniature businessman. "Do I really have to wear this?" Leo tugged at the collar. "Only for a few hours, then you can change." "Why are you marrying Mom?" The question was so direct that Julian had to pause. He knelt down to Leo's level. "Because I love her, and I love you. And I want us to be a real family. We are already a real family." "You are right, we are. But I want to make it official. I want to adopt you, Leo. I want to be your dad, legally, not just in our hearts. Would that be okay with you?" Leo considered this with the seriousness of a child making important decisions. "Would I have to call you Dad?" "You could call me whatever you want. Dad, Julian. Mr. Julian, I do not care about the name. I care about being the person who shows up for you, who teaches you things, who is there when you are scared or happy or anything in between. The man at the community center said he is my real dad. He is the person who helped make you. But being a dad is more than that. It is being there every day, reading bedtime stories, teaching you about gardens, holding your mum when she is scared, being part of your life. That is what makes someone a real dad. And if you let me, I would like to be that for you." Leo threw his arms around Julian's neck. "You are already that. I love you." Julian held the boy and felt something settle in his chest. This was what Sarah had wanted for him. Not to stay frozen in grief, but to love again, to be a father, to build a family. And somehow, impossibly, the universe had delivered that family to him at a bus stop on a cold January night. The wedding planning took on a life of its own. What started as a small ceremony in the greenhouse became slightly larger when Amelia realized how many people had helped her survive the years of running. The shelter director who had given her a safe place to sleep. The church secretary who had slipped her grocery gift cards, the nurse who had treated Leo's asthma for free, the documentary filmmaker who had become a friend. They all deserved to be there, to witness the happy ending that their small kindnesses had made possible. The invitations were simple, no fancy calligraphy, just honest words. "You helped us survive. Please help us celebrate." And they came. These strangers who had shown up in Amelia's darkest moments. These people who had seen a woman and a child in need and had chosen kindness. They filled the greenhouse on a Saturday in May, surrounded by the flowers that Julian and Amelia had planted together, and they witnessed something rare, a wedding that was not about pageantry or status, but about two people choosing each other, choosing family, choosing hope. Leo walked Amelia down the aisle. It was not traditional, but nothing about them was traditional. And when the boy placed his mother's hand in Julian's, he whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Take care of her. She takes care of everybody else. Now it is your turn." The vows were simple. No flowery language, no grand gestures, just truth. Julian spoke first. "Amelia, I was dead until I saw you. You taught me that love does not betray the past. It honors it by continuing. I promise to stand beside you, not in front of you. I promise to listen when you tell me I am being controlling. I promise to be a father to Leo that he can be proud of. And I promise to keep planting gardens with you for the rest of our lives. Amelia's voice shook, but held. Julian, I was running until you gave me a reason to stop. You gave me safety when I had nothing. You gave my son a home. You gave me permission to trust again. I promise to let you help, even when it is hard. I promise to remember that we are partners, not savior and saved. I promise to build this family with you, whatever that looks like. And I promise that every day I will choose you, even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. The minister smiled. I have been marrying people for 30 years, and these are the most honest vows I have ever heard. By the power vested in me by the state of Connecticut, I pronounce you husband and wife. And Leo, come here. The boy stepped forward. I pronounce you a family, not just by marriage, but by choice, by love, by commitment. Kiss your bride, Julian, and Leo. You can hug them both. They kissed, they hugged, they cried, and every person in that greenhouse knew they were witnessing something sacred, not a fairy tale, not a rescue story, but something better, real love. Complicated, messy, beautiful love that had survived doubt and fear and the worst that life could throw at it. The reception was in the gardens, tables under string lights, food that Mrs. Chen had spent days preparing, toasts that made people laugh and cry in equal measure, dancing on the lawn as the sun set and the fireflies emerged. Julian danced with Amelia and then with Leo, lifting the boy onto his feet so they could sway to the music. You know what, little man? I think this is the best day of my life. Better than when you had lots of money. I still have lots of money. But now I have something more important. I have you and your mom, and I would trade every dollar I have to keep you both. That is good, because I would not want to live anywhere else. I love the greenhouse, and the gardens, and having a dad. The word dad, not Mr. Julian, just dad. Simple and perfect and everything Julian had never thought he would hear. Later, after the guests had left and Leo was asleep in the cottage, Julian and Amelia stood in the greenhouse under the stars. She wore her wedding ring now, alongside the engagement ring. He wore a gold band for the first time since removing Sarah's ring. They were married. Tomorrow, they would file the adoption papers. In 6 months, they would stand before a judge again. But tonight, they were just two people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen light. Thank you, Amelia said. For what? For stopping at that traffic light. For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving my son. For being patient while I learned to trust. For all of it. Thank you for waking up. For taking a chance on a stranger. For letting me be part of your family. For saving my life. We saved each other. Yes, we did. They kissed under the glass roof. Surrounded by life they had coaxed from soil, and they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, as partners, as equals, as family. The battle was not over. Marcus would not go quietly. Victoria would not give up easily. The home study still loomed. The final custody hearing was still months away. But they had this moment, this choice, this love, and sometimes that is all anyone needs. The courage to choose, the strength to stay, the faith that something beautiful can grow from even the darkest soil. They were proof of that. Living, breathing proof that second chances were real, that love could heal, that families could be built from broken pieces and become stronger than any family born from perfect circumstances. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight, in the greenhouse that had transformed from tomb to garden, they had everything. Each other, their son, their hope, their future. It was enough. It was everything. It was home. The documentary premiered on a Thursday evening at a small theatre in Hartford. The filmmaker, a woman named Sarah who had spent 3 months embedded in their lives, had created something powerful. Not a puff piece, not a fairy tale, but an honest look at survival, love, and the messy reality of building a family from trauma and hope. The theatre was packed. Survivors, advocates, journalists, people who had followed Amelia's story from that first viral interview, and in the center of it all, Amelia sat between Julian and Leo, watching her life play out on a screen 20 feet tall. It opened with the bus stop. Not the real footage, obviously, but a recreation that caught the essence of that night. A woman sleeping, a child in her arms, a man in an expensive car who chose to stop. The narrator's voice, warm and clear, began the story. This is Amelia Hayes. 7 months ago, she was homeless. Today, she is married to a millionaire and fighting for the right to keep her son. But this is not a fairy tale. This is a story about what happens when someone sees you at your lowest moment and chooses to believe you deserve better. The film moved chronologically. Shelter footage from years ago, provided by workers who remembered Amelia, interviews with people who had helped her, the church secretary, the nurse, the shelter director. They all told versions of the same story, a woman who never gave up, who protected her son fiercely, who worked any job available, who was kind even when she had nothing. Then the footage shifted to the estate, to Amelia working in the gardens, to Leo playing, to Julian teaching the boy about roses, to the 3 of them at dinner, laughing about something Leo had said. The intimacy of it made Amelia's chest tight. They had allowed the cameras into their lives, trusting Sarah to tell the truth, and she had, but she had also included the hard parts, footage from outside the courthouse, the custody papers being served, Amelia's interview where she spoke about the abuse, Marcus's lawyer's statements painting her as opportunistic, Victoria's face in the background of one shot, cold and calculating. The film did not villainize, but it did not soften either. It showed Marcus for what he was, a man being paid to pursue a child he did not know. It showed Victoria as a woman so consumed by grief that she had weaponized it, and it showed Amelia and Julian as 2 imperfect people trying their best. The most powerful moment came near the end. Amelia speaking directly to the camera, tears streaming down her face. People ask if I am using Julian, if this is about money. And I want to say something to every person who has ever escaped an abusive relationship, to every person who has ever been homeless, to every person who has ever been judged for accepting help. You are not using anyone by accepting kindness. You are not weak for needing support. You are not a gold digger for finding love after trauma. You are a survivor, and survivors do whatever it takes to protect their children. I am not ashamed of my past. I'm not ashamed of accepting Julian's help. I am proud. I am proud that I ran. I am proud that I survived. And I am proud that I let myself love again. If that makes me a gold digger in someone's eyes, then they do not understand what real gold looks like. Real gold is the man who reads to my son every night. Real gold is the home where my child can breathe without fear. Real gold is being seen as human. That is what Julian gave me. Not money. Humanity. The screen went dark. Then a final title card. Marcus Bennett has been granted supervised visitation once a month, pending a final custody hearing. Victoria Sterling declined to be interviewed for this film. The Second Chances Foundation, created by Amelia and Julian Thorne, has helped 47 families escape domestic violence in the 6 months since its founding. If you or someone you know needs help, please call the number on the screen. The applause was deafening. People stood. Some were crying. Amelia felt Julian's hand find hers, squeezing gently. On her other side, Leo whispered, "Mom, you are famous. No, baby, we are just telling the truth, that is all. But it was more than that. The film was a phenomenon. Within 24 hours, it had been picked up by a streaming service. Within a week, it had been viewed millions of times. Amelia's face was everywhere. Her words were quoted on social media. Survivors shared their stories in the comments, thousands of them, each one a testament to the courage it takes to leave. And in a quiet office in Manhattan, Victoria Sterling watched the documentary on her laptop and felt something crack. She saw herself in the background of that courthouse footage, saw the coldness in her own expression, saw the way Amelia had spoken about grief weaponized, and she recognized herself in those words. For the first time in 7 years, Victoria allowed herself to wonder if she was wrong, if Sarah would actually be ashamed of what her aunt had done in her name, if honoring the dead meant trapping the living in permanent mourning. She picked up her phone, dialed Marcus Bennett's lawyer. "I am withdrawing my financial support. Drop the custody case, but we are scheduled for the final hearing in 2 weeks." I said, "Drop it. I am done." She hung up, and then she did something she had not done since Sarah's funeral. She cried, not dignified tears, ugly, wrenching sobs that came from a place so deep she had forgotten it existed. She cried for Sarah, for Julian, for the years she had wasted trying to preserve something that could not be preserved, for the damage she had done, for the loneliness that had made her into someone she did not recognize. When the tears finally stopped, Victoria made another call to her therapist, the one she had stopped seeing because the woman kept suggesting that her grief had become unhealthy. "I need an appointment as soon as possible. I think I need help." It was not redemption, not yet, but it was a start. And sometimes a start is all anyone can manage. Meanwhile, at the estate, Julian's lawyer called with unexpected news. Marcus Bennett's legal team just contacted me. They are withdrawing the custody petition. Marcus is voluntarily relinquishing all parental rights. He will sign whatever documents we need. He wants out. Amelia sat down hard. What? Why? Victoria Sterling pulled her funding. Without her money, Marcus has no interest in pursuing this. My guess is the documentary made continuing this impossible. Public opinion matters, and right now, public opinion is very much on your side. So it is over. Leo is safe. We still need the judge to approve the termination of rights and Julian's adoption. But yes, the battle is over. You won. When Amelia told Leo, the boy did not quite understand. So I do not have to see that man again. Not if you do not want to. And Mr. Julian, I mean Dad, he gets to really be my dad. Yes, we just need a judge to sign the papers. But yes, Leo thought about this. Good, because he is already my dad. The paper is just catching up. Out of the mouths of children. The paper was just catching up to reality. And sometimes that was exactly how life worked. The heart knew long before the law did. Love existed before it was recognized. Family was real before it was official. That night, the three of them celebrated quietly. No big party, just dinner in the kitchen. Julian's attempt at lasagna that was slightly burnt, but eaten with enthusiasm anyway. Leo's chatter about a bird's nest he had found in the oak tree. Amelia's laughter at Julian's terrible jokes. The ordinary magic of family dinner. After Leo was in bed, Amelia and Julian sat on the cottage porch. The June night was warm, stars bright above the trees. Fireflies danced in the gardens they had brought back to life. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," Amelia admitted. "For something to go wrong, for this to be too good to be true. It is not too good to be true, it is just good. And we earned it. Every moment of happiness we earned through surviving everything that tried to break us." "Do you think Victoria will try something else?" "No! I think she finally saw herself clearly, and I think she realized that what she was doing was not about protecting me. It was about controlling me. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom before they can change. Do you forgive her? Julian was quiet for a long moment. I do not know, but I hope she finds peace. I hope she learns to live for herself instead of for a ghost. I hope she gets help, because underneath the manipulation and the cruelty, she is just a lonely woman who loved her niece too much and did not know how to let go. You are a better person than I am. I just want her to leave us alone. And she will. She finally will. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the night. Tomorrow, they would call Margaret and begin the process of finalizing the adoption. Next week, they would start paperwork for the foundation. Next month, they would take Leo to the beach for the first time. Next year, maybe they would think about more children. Adoption, perhaps. Giving another child a second chance the way Leo had been given one. But for tonight, this was enough. This porch, this man, this life they had built from nothing but courage and stubbornness and love. Amelia leaned her head on Julian's shoulder. Thank you for stopping at that traffic light. Thank you for being there when I did. Do you think we would have found each other eventually, even if that night had not happened? I like to think so. I like to think that you and Leo were always meant to be mine, that the universe was just waiting for the right moment to bring us together. But I'm also grateful that I did not have to wait any longer, that I got 7 more months of knowing you than I would have otherwise. Romantic. True. They stayed there until the fireflies faded and the night grew cool. And when they finally went inside, Amelia knew with certainty that the worst was behind them, that the battles had been fought and won, that what lay ahead was the beautiful, mundane work of building a life, of raising a son, of running a foundation, of growing old together in gardens they had planted with their own hands. It was not a fairy tale ending. It was better, it was real. And real, Amelia had learned, was worth more than any fantasy. They had survived. And now, finally, they could live. The final custody hearing was anticlimactic in the best possible way. The courtroom was nearly empty. Just them, their lawyer, Marcus's now former lawyer, and Judge Castellanos, who looked almost pleased. Mr. Bennett has withdrawn his petition and voluntarily terminated his parental rights, the judge said, reviewing the paperwork. And you, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, are petitioning to adopt Leo Hayes Thorne. Yes, Your Honor, Julian and Amelia said in unison. Leo. The judge looked at the boy sitting between his parents. Do you understand what adoption means? It means Julian gets to be my real dad, not just my heart dad, my paper dad too. Judge Castellanos smiled. That is exactly right. And is that what you want? Yes, because he already is. We just need you to make it official. The judge looked at her paperwork, at the home study that had come back glowing, at the reports from Leo's doctor saying his asthma had improved dramatically in stable housing, at the letters of recommendation from teachers and Mrs. Chen and the shelter director. Then she looked at this family that had been built from broken pieces. Based on the home study, the termination of biological father's rights, the child's clear wishes, and the obvious stability and love in this home, I am approving this adoption pending final paperwork completion. The legal process will take approximately 3 to 6 months to fully finalize. But as of today, this court recognizes Julian Thorne as Leo's adoptive father in process, with full parental rights and responsibilities. Congratulations. You are officially a family. The gavel came down, and Leo jumped from his seat into Julian's arms. I told you the judge was nice. Walking out of the courthouse this time felt different than before. No reporters, no cameras, no Victoria watching from the shadows. Just a family leaving a building, heading to their car, planning to stop for ice cream on the way home. In the car, Leo fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the emotional weight of the day. Amelia looked back at him, her son, their son, and felt something settle that she had not known was still unsettled. "It is really over," she said. "It is really over. I keep thinking about all the nights on bus benches, all the times I thought we would never be safe, all the fear. And now you are safe. He is safe. We are a family, legally, officially, permanently. I wish I could go back and tell that woman at the bus stop that it would be okay. That help was coming, that she just had to hold on a little longer. She knew that woman was strong enough to survive until help arrived. She trusted herself enough to accept it when it came, and she raised a son who is brave and kind and funny and smart. You did that, Amelia, not me, not the estate, not the money, you. We did it together. Together, Julian agreed. 6 months passed in the kind of beautiful monotony that Amelia had dreamed about during the running years. Wake up, make breakfast, take Leo to school, work in the gardens, run the foundation, have dinner, help with homework, read stories, go to sleep in a bed that was hers, in a house that was hers, with a family that was hers. The adoption was finalized in October. The papers came in a thick envelope from the court. Leo Thorne Hayes. Born September 15th, 2019. Mother, Amelia Hayes Thorne. Father, Julian Robert Thorne. A birth certificate that told a different truth than genetics, a truth about choice and commitment and love. They framed it and hung it in Leo's room. "So you always know you were chosen," Julian said, "not just by accident of birth, but deliberately, consciously, wanted." The Second Chances Foundation grew beyond anything they had imagined. By December, they had helped 160 families escape domestic violence. They provided legal aid, temporary housing, job training, therapy, and community. The estate's guest cottages were always full, a rotating cast of mothers and children rebuilding their lives with Amelia as their guide, someone who understood because she had been there. In January, exactly 1 year after that night at the bus stop, they threw a party. Not a celebration of the anniversary, though that was part of it, but a celebration of the foundation, of the families they had helped, of the community they had built. The greenhouse was transformed, tables laden with food, string lights, people everywhere, survivors who had become thrivers, children who had found safety, volunteers who had given time, donors who had given money, all of them connected by the belief that everyone deserved a second chance. Amelia gave a speech, standing on a small platform with Julian beside her and Leo in front. "A year ago, I was sleeping at a bus stop with my son in my arms, wondering how we would survive another night. I did not believe in miracles. I did not believe in fairy tales. I barely believed in tomorrow. But a man stopped his car, and he saw me. Not my homelessness, not my past, not my problems. He saw me, he saw my son, and he offered help. Not because he wanted something in return, but because he was human enough to recognize suffering and wealthy enough to ease it. That changed my life. But it also taught me something. We are all just one stopped car away from changing someone's life. One moment of seeing, one choice to help, one decision to believe that the stranger in front of you deserves dignity. This foundation exists because Julian stopped his car. But it will continue because all of you have chosen to stop too, to see the people society makes invisible, to offer help without judgment, to believe in second chances. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you for choosing to see. The applause was thunderous, but Amelia was not looking at the crowd. She was looking at Julian, whose eyes were bright with tears, and Leo, who was beaming with pride. And she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a bus stop to a greenhouse full of people celebrating hope, from running to standing still, from surviving to thriving, from broken to whole. It was not a fairy tale. Fairy tales did not include domestic violence and custody battles and grief so deep it turned people into ghosts, but it was a love story, the truest kind. Two people choosing each other every day, choosing to work on themselves, choosing to forgive mistakes, choosing to build something beautiful from rubble. Later, after the guests had left and the caterers had cleaned up, the three of them returned to the greenhouse. Their place, where Sarah's memory had been honored by transformation rather than preservation, where dead things had been composted to make room for new growth, where a family had been built from soil and sunlight and stubborn faith that beauty could bloom from darkness. Leo looked up at the glass ceiling, at the stars visible through the panes. "Dad, do you think the stars know they are beautiful?" Julian smiled. "I do not know, buddy. Why?" "Because I did not know we would be happy. When we were at bus stops, I did not know. But we are. We are really, really happy." "Yes," Julian said, pulling both Amelia and Leo close. "We really, really are." Amelia closed her eyes and breathed in the smell of earth and flowers and the particular scent of her family. She thought about that woman at the bus stop, the one who had been so tired she could barely keep her eyes open, the one who had been so scared of what tomorrow would bring, the one who had been so certain that happiness was for other people, not for survivors. She wanted to tell that woman, "You were wrong. Happiness is for you too. Love is for you too. Peace is for you too. You just have to survive long enough to find it. You just have to be brave enough to accept it when it comes. You just have to trust that you deserve it. And you do. Oh, you do." The greenhouse lights dimmed, the stars brightened, and three people who had found each other in the darkness stood together in the light they had made, proof that sometimes the world stops at a red light and everything changes. Sometimes help comes in the form of a stranger who sees you when you are invisible. Sometimes courage looks like accepting that help instead of refusing it out of pride. Sometimes love is not about perfection, but about two broken people choosing to heal together. Sometimes family is not about blood, but about who shows up. And sometimes, just sometimes, bus stops are not endings, but beginnings. Not the place where you have nothing, but the place where you find everything. Julian had been right that first night. It was fate, the traffic light, the glance, the choice to stop. All of it had been leading to this, to 7 years of grief ending, to 7 years of running, stopping, to a man learning to live again, to a woman learning to trust again, to a boy getting the father he deserved, to a family being made from the most unlikely ingredients. They stood in their greenhouse, their garden, their home, and they knew with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. Together, safe, loved, free. And in that knowing was every happy ending anyone could need. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, earned, theirs. The world was full of bus stops and traffic lights and moments where everything could change. Full of people waiting to be seen, full of strangers who could become family, full of second chances and new beginnings, and the possibility that even the darkest night could end in sunrise. All it took was one person brave enough to stop, one person desperate enough to accept help, and two people strong enough to build something beautiful from the wreckage of what came before. They had done that. They were doing that. They would keep doing that, together. And that, after everything, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.